One Ohio Recovery Foundation May board meeting. You would think that I would know by now that that voiceover is going to hit me when I open up the meeting. But anyway, first I'd like to turn it over to Sarah and she can lead us through a roll call so we can establish that we have a quorum for today's meeting.
All right, I'll just give it a few seconds for any board member on the virtually to get off of mute. All righty, Rachel Baker. Director Clay Meyer. Director Terry Johnson. Director Monica Robb Blaisdell.
Here.
Director Dawn Tyler Lee.
Here.
Director Dee Stone.
Here.
Director David Mattia.
Here.
Director Scott Silak.
Here.
Director Greta Johnson.
Here.
Director Keith Hohaddle.
Here.
Director Dwayne Piccirilli.
Here.
Director Judy Dodge.
Here.
Director Scotty Powell. Director Jeanette Wiersbicki.
Here.
Director Don Mason.
Here.
Director Ted St. John.
Here.
Director Greta Mayer. Director Julie Amen.
Here.
Director Alicia Bruce.
Here.
Director Mircha Handru.
Here.
Director Tom Whiston. Director Daphne Ayers.
Here.
Director Tom Gregoire.
Here.
Director Larry Kidd.
Here.
Director Jonathan Lee. Director Jim White.
Here.
Director Robert Radcliffe.
The real Robert Radcliffe here.
And Director Michael Raisin.
Here.
We have a quorum and we've met our requirements in all categories. So thank you so much, Sarah. I'd like to also take a moment to welcome our guests. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Again, if you're one of our guests, we cannot hear you or reply immediately to your comments. But if you email us at info@oneohiofoundation.com, again, that's info@oneohiofoundation.com, we'll be able to see it immediately and we may be able to address whatever remarks. But before we take today's meeting, I want to take a moment and recognize this is the beginning of our biennial meeting. So I want to thank you for having taken time to adjust your schedules to be with us today. And as we will discuss in a moment, we have a very full agenda, and this includes several key topics that will move the foundation's missions forward and fulfill the requirements of the biennial meetings as set by our code of regulations. And again, thank you everybody for your flexibility. I want to also take a moment to recognize this is Mental Health Awareness Month. And at One Ohio this month holds a particular meeting. Our work exists at the intersection of recovery, behavioral health, and community well-being. And mental health is central to all of it. We know that the path to recovery is rarely just about substance use. It's about the whole person healing. So this month, we want to honor individuals and their families who are navigating that journey. Again, thank you to our staff, our grantees, our partners, and community members who show up to support mental health of Ohioans every day. We appreciate your commitment. Next, I'd like to take a moment to recognize and highlight a few changes in the One Ohio Board of Directors. First of all, I'd like to recognize Larry Kidd. Larry informed me last week that he'd be resigning from his position on the foundation board, but will forever remain supported to what we do. Larry was one of the founding board members and very early was the chairman of the board, has been a trusted member of the executive committee, and again, as I mentioned, has been on numerous other committees. But Larry, we're going to really miss having you here. And I really need to point out the most important thing Larry did for us was he found Alicia. So without that fine, and I wish you guys understood it. It's probably 7 of us on the search committee, and we'd gone through candidates and Larry said, I think I've got one more. I'm not sure, the deadline was whatever. And we're like, no, that was the smartest, yes, let's listen that we ever had. And within probably 4 or 5 minutes, it was okay, I got it. This is the one. So Larry, thank you so much for finding Alicia and just doing all that work as foundation. It was really hard the first couple of years when Larry was the chair because we're putting together an initial foundation of, again, 29 diverse members, 19 diverse committees. And we had all these little requirements that had been penned into a memorandum of understanding that we had to understand the memorandum of understanding. Larry, you have any comments at this time?
I just appreciate, it's been an honor serving on the board. Blood, sweat, and tears of the original board members. And Connie, she was not a board member, but she was there every step of the way too. It was a challenge at first. It was, we were in the middle of some lawsuits and had to work through all that. But you guys were resilient and you're going to do great things. You've done great things. And, I have a lot of appreciation for what you guys have done. So, I'll be available if you need anything, but it's time to turn the baton to somebody else. But thank you so much for allowing me to serve.
Mr. Chair, could I comment briefly?
Please, Mr. Gregoire.
Oh, I was here with you at the beginning too, and I'm moderately shocked that became this. And how organized it is, how things have grown, how we've solved a lot of problems, and really you lit that match. And so I just want to make sure that for members who perhaps are joining us a little later, you found it, you helped us get out of the woods. Absolutely.
Thank you there, Thomas. And again, for everybody, don't forget to turn on your little green light when you're speaking so people online can listen. Next, I'd like to thank another founding board member, Commissioner Denise Driehaus. Denise has served as Region 2's appointees, informed us her term has come to an end. Again, we'd like to thank you for her long-term service, and she continues to support individuals and families impacted by substance use disorders. Thank you, Denise. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our newest member of the board of directors. And Dee Stone is joining us from Region 2. And Dee, I want you to introduce yourself, or else I'm going to introduce you.
Okay, I'm Dee Stone, the new appointed member of the Region 2. So filling Denise's shoes, hopefully. I've known Don Mason since 3rd grade. So there you go. I don't know what that says about me, but so I was appointed to the Region 2 board from the beginning. I was appointed as a person with lived experience. I've been in recovery for 35 years. But I'm also an Anderson Township trustee, so I get it from a couple angles. So I've been happy to serve on the Region 2 board. It's a great board. We do a lot of great work down there. So now I'm moving to this level. So it'd be interesting to see it from this perspective as coming from there. So, and happy to be here. So, thank you all.
Thank you. And again, it's just, for me, it's very, it's like a part of my home is here. My elementary school friend, who was always the smartest one in the class. You got guys like me making sure, well, I'm not going to say what your real name was back. What did Robin, her name's Robin. What did Robin say? Anyway, thank you. And we also have some new One Ohio staff members with us today. First is Danielle Gray, who served as the foundation's newest leader within the grants team and will be our behavioral health program manager. Danielle and her team will serve as the main point of contact for our grantees once awarded a grant from the foundation, ensuring that we provide technical assistance to support grantees across the state. Prior to her work at the foundation, Danielle led a statewide nonprofit organization that many of you may be familiar with called Ohio Recovery Housing. We're happy to welcome Danielle to the team. Thank you. Next, I'd also like to introduce Amy Kurtz, who is the foundation's new communications and public education program manager. Amy will be working alongside with Amy Shadwick and the entire team on the state public education campaign to ensure that we meet the contract deliverables and assist in developing 4 important prevention campaigns that we will discuss later in the agenda. Thank you. So in your packet, you can find a full list of One Ohio staff that you can get to know them and their role as supporting the foundation's mission. And I look forward, I know, to working with each of them. So the first item then on the business is approval of the agenda. I'd like to recognize a slight change from the agenda that was sent out last week, and it's in front of you today. So we will be removing the Audit and Finance Committee's new report overview and saving that for a later meeting. Are there any other proposed edits to the agenda? If not, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as provided? By, is that Ted? Yeah. Motion by Ted? Second. Second by Keith Hohottle. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against. Motion carries. So rarely do you ever say, for or against. It's just always for. So the nominating committee is next. Excuse me, I'm going too quick, I guess. In the packet, you have the draft minutes from the March 11th meeting. Can I have a motion to accept the March meetings as minutes provided by Jeanette?
Second.
Second by Greta. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Now we move to the nominating committee. So as I mentioned at the start of today's meeting, this is our biennial meeting, which offers an opportunity not only to reflect on the accomplishments we have made, but also a chance to identify new leaders amongst this board. Every 2 years, a nominating committee is formed that consists of chairpersons of the foundation standing committees. Is that going on the slide?
Yeah.
Okay. The committee is responsible for drafting the slate of officers to serve on the executive committee and as officers of the board. Committee met in April and reviewed our current list of officers and members of the executive committee. From those discussions came a consensus on our new slate that will carry the foundation forward. So today we bring before you a recommended slate that will serve the board over the next 2 years. This includes, and it's posted there, this includes a nomination of Julie Amon, who's been vice chair, to serve as chair, Keith Hohottle, who's been secretary, to serve as vice chair, Greta Mayer to serve as secretary, and Dr. Michael Rosen to continue as the treasurer of our organization, Rachel Baker to serve on the executive committee at large, and Jim White as the second at large to serve on the executive committee. And then as past chair, there's a ex officio position, or there's a de facto position as a member of that board. So is there a motion to adopt that slate?
So moved.
By Dwayne. Is there a second by Daphne, right? Yeah. Want to make sure my memory is right. Yeah. Any discussion, and I'm very pleased, any discussion on our nominating committee? Hearing none, do we do a roll call or a voice vote? I think we could do a voice. I'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. I'll chair the rest of the meeting, though.
Thank you. You're smiling.
I was gonna get up. If I had to get out, I would have.
You should know, I looked at the agenda, and said, his name's still on the rest.
All right. Thank you very much. And now we have an opportunity for a very special presentation by BlackRock. Again, our investment committee, Jim White, did a wonderful job going through probably 15 to 20 entities that wanted to serve as our financial advisors. And again, due to the hard work of that committee and Jim, BlackRock was selected. So, Jim?
No, I'd just like to say that, we went through a very rigorous process. We've discussed that, I think, in previous meetings. It's been a real pleasure to work with BlackRock since we kind of selected them over the last, 60 days. Hopefully all of you have had an opportunity to participate in some of these kind of risk investment workshops that we put on, I think probably a couple weeks ago. Keith actually kind of came up to me and commented that it was very helpful to him. So hopefully all of you had an opportunity to at least participate and really understand kind of, what we're going through, how we're kind of viewing this through what lens. And it's a very complicated thing. And I think we're making great progress. BlackRock has been, as we expected, a tremendous partner so far. And I feel like we're really moving the ball forward, and we're kind of getting down into the red zone in terms of developing our investment policy and ultimately implementing a really great investment strategy that will be very sustainable for kind of the long term. And I know it's been something that you all, including me, have been asking for probably a couple of years, and I think we're getting pretty close. So thank you all for your participation in that process. And then and also to BlackRock for their partnership so far. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ned and I think John. And I think who else is up there? Do I see Nelly up there?
Nelly is here.
Yeah.
Yep. Dialing in from family vacation. I think it's 4 a.m. Nelia time. So Nelia, thanks for making it. And Jim, thank you. And thank you to the staff. We know a ton of hard work has gone into this from the investment committee, from the staff, again, from the board as well, as Jim mentioned, for those who've been able to join some of our information sessions. So just really appreciate all of the thoughtfulness that's gone into these questions, because they're not easy questions and they're not one size fits all. There's no foundation we work with that's identical to the next foundation. And we don't come into these questions about whether it's spending policy or it's investment strategy, which are, of course, the two things we're talking about today, with any agenda. It's really about kind of listening to those constituents that we just mentioned across staff, the board, and the investment committee, and really understanding kind of what are the key needs as far as spending, as far as financial health, as far as impact, and then presenting information that helps the foundation make decisions about those trade-offs, the costs and benefits of one spending policy versus another, the costs and benefits of one investment strategy versus another. So kind of what we're sharing today is some of the consensus that's come out of those discussions. And please interrupt us as we go through as we share some of those findings. But I will hand it to Nelia to do so, unless, John, is there anything you wanted to share up front? And John is also sick, so it might be good to even spare him. And Nelia, we can move forward.
Great. Thank you all for being here today. And again, I will reiterate the big thank you to everybody who's been involved with these conversations that we've been kind of having together. And before we look at the conclusions from the sessions with the investment committee, the staff, we wanted to talk a little bit through about how we got there in case you haven't kind of been able to see this before. So with that, I see somebody is sharing a screen. I can't tell exactly who, but I'll try to be correct with my page numbers. But if we click to page 3. So we wanted to take a look at first at the kind of current status of the foundation. And so looking at the information shared with us about projected settlement inflows going forward, which total $600 million, and also kind of model forward projections for things like the expected foundation term, or when the foundation is expected to have paid out its last dollar, as well as what the total spending could look like over the course of that term. So on this page up top in that table, those are kind of the input assumptions. So starting portfolio value at 300 million, of course, that does not incorporate the future expected settlement inflows. Modeling in the existing grants, so grant cycle 1 and 2, the remaining amount that is yet to be paid out. Assuming a portfolio asset allocation, meaning where are those assets held today, held in investment grade fixed income and cash, which given our kind of long-term projections for returns across asset classes, looks like a long-term return of about 3%. And so what does this look like in terms of at not grant making, but annual kind of outflows out of the foundation if these regional grant cycles were to kind of continue on an annual basis, given the 2 to 3 year payout kind of structure of those. So we model 34 million as the annual outflow out of the foundation as kind of our base case. And so in the analysis on the bottom of this page, so we assume again that current spending continues into the future, or that 34 million comes out of the portfolio every year. And the chart on the left shows how in our simulations, the portfolio's market value evolves over time, where time is on the horizontal axis in years. The curve in blue assumes settlement inflows come in exactly as expected. So both in terms of their projected timing and also amount. And you see that the foundation's expected market value starts to decline about at year 10, and that the foundation spends down its last dollar in this example by year 24. The curve in purple below the blue curve shows a more conservative future settlement inflow scenario. So we would assume that only half, or 300 million, of that 600 million projected settlement inflow total actually comes into the portfolio. That is not any scientific kind of projection, but really trying to model the sensitivity of outcomes to when and what that cash looks like in the future. So the purple curve really starts to decline much faster as annual spending is the same as it is in the blue base case scenario every year, but there is of course less money coming into the portfolio, resulting in the expectation that the foundation runs out of money much sooner, in 16 years in the purple versus 24 in the base case in blue. And what does that ultimately look like in terms of spending over time? You see that in the table on the right. If you look at the expected total community investment, because in the conservative case, you run out of money sooner, that translates to about $250 million less spent on your mission over time. A question that we've had during our conversations is regarding that $34 million assumption, being that current total spend. And maybe with that, I'll pass it to Alicia on the following page to demonstrate kind of what spending has actually looked like and is projected to look like for those first 2 regional grant cycles. And then we'll kind of pick it right back up in terms of projections in our modeling going forward.
Thank you, Nelia, and good morning, everyone. At your seats, if you're here, I'm looking at this grid with the pink, green, and kind of peach color. And I think the folks on the phone can see it pretty well. What we wanted to showcase here, as she's talking about this 34 million, is not that 34 million equals a regional grant cycle. This is really talking at a high level about what spending from the foundation could look like. And we're not projecting anything into what that equals at this meeting or at this time. You guys will have the opportunity to kind of weigh in on what that spending will equal at future meetings. And so, for example, we just wanted to play this out so you could see what it looks like with our actual spending in 2024 and 2025. And so if you look at those first 2 columns there, actual spending really after we granted our first cycle awards in 2024, because those grants were confirmed later in the year. Remember, it was kind of November, December. We only actually sent out in 2024 an initial payment set of about $2.5 million. Fast forward to 2025, we spent about $18.8 million after we sent out our first payments and some more of our initial payments for 2025. And then finally in 2026, is this mic not working? Oh, okay. Let's see if that's better. Hopefully online that's better. Okay, thank you. That's why you have a team, right? So And then I press the button. Okay, so just to kind of recap quickly, the 2024 column is our actual spending and grants out the door for 2.5 million. This does not include, as you probably could imagine, our operations. These numbers are just our grant making out the door. Then there's the 2025 column that shows the actual spending to our grantees, which was 18.8. And that really reflects the first half of cycle one grant making, as you can see in that top line. Then we introduce this year a second cycle. And so we continue our cycle one spending at 17.5, but we will introduce likely a 5.7, we're estimating initial payments out to the community once we get through our grant round for cycle two, which leaves this balance, unallocated balance of 10.7 million. So for this year, because of how our grant process and our grant making is really kind of equaling into actual spending, we will not spend the $34 million we could have spent, we could have allocated to the community based on the models that you're going to see. So if we use 34, this is, a number that, really it was built out of the models that you'll see in a minute. If we use 34 million as our base case of spending every year, it really doesn't equal the regional grant spending because our grant cycles and the contracts we write with our grantees are spread over years. So we wanted to make sure you kind of have this concept in mind as you're looking at these. We will, of course, need to come back to what do we do with, the unallocated balances in future years, but I wanted you all to kind of see where we are as of today. So for 2026, that leaves an unallocated balance of 10.7. But then you look at 2027, that leaves an unallocated balance of 5.3. And then another unallocated balance in 2028, about 16.2. So we can model that up. We'll have conversations about, what that means. And we're going to partner with the Audit and Finance, the Investment and the Grants Committee to bring you some recommendations on what we can do with those unallocated balances. But those are for conversations of tomorrow. So I will turn it back over to Nalia to just kind of pull this base case $34 million spend back into the formula discussions for today.
I have a math question.
Sure.
Shouldn't the unallocated balance be higher? I mean, the $10,000 in 2026 should include the majority of the cycle two spending that hasn't been spent, right? Shouldn't it be more than 10 million?
So for 2026,
Or you just tell me how that unallocated balance is calculated.
yeah. So if you assume 34 million is our spend every year and what we have to spend every year, we've already allocated 17.5 million to what we know our contracts are out the door right now around cycle one. So we have cycle one grantees who are owed payments this year biannually that total 17.5. We're estimating for cycle two that we're going to talk about later today, that once we get the contract signed and the initial payments out the door, our first payments for cycle two will equal somewhere around 5.7 million. That number is just an estimate. And so if you take that 17 plus that 5.7 and reduce that 34 million by that number, and I've never been a good math person, but you get that $10.7 million balance if our numbers are correct.
Cycle one spending is $51 million, right?
Correct.
Cycle two is 34 million.
Cycle one spending was 45 million, but we had allocated 51. And by the time you take the contracts for that $45 million and determine what your actual spend is each year, that equals the numbers that you see here. So we don't spend, even though we allocate and grant out 45 million, the grantees don't get 100% of their money up front. They get it over time, and that over time splits between these years. That's on the grid.
Okay. I may not ever understand your math, but I think the point is we have to invest the money that's going to be allocated differently than the money that's not allocated. I
Correct.
assume that what we're going to hear later in this presentation.
Correct. And if anyone else from our, David from our finance team. wants
Another
to-
way of looking at this is if you look across and total the rows, may help a little bit.
Okay.
Because the rows total up to the 45, to the 45 million for cycle one, and two, essentially, the unallocated balance is still what is, essentially available above and beyond what we've already done in order to smooth out the spending at 34 million. So I think looking across the row and the math may help a little bit here, and happy to maybe come back with some additional table, in the future to help show how it then works.
Okay. Well, thank
Should
you,
we
Judge.
move-
I know we'll continue to kind of build out the graphics, but the point here is the 34 million does not make a decision on regional grant spending today. That's for another conversation. 34.
Yeah, and this is Jim. I just like to point out, Judge, too, that it really the investment strategy or the implementation really doesn't change in terms of, unallocated balance. I mean, the investment strategy is the investment strategy, right? And it's going to allow us to be able to spend, right? Assuming that we can get some consensus, right? On average, and this is gonna fluctuate. You'll see this later in the presentation. But let's say on average, $34 million, right? A year spent. Now, once again, that's going to go to operations, and it could go to, right? It's going to go to cycle spending 1, cycle spending 2, maybe cycle spending 3 if we do that eventually. But it's just kind of a yearly number, and so the unallocated balance is not going to get managed, quite honestly, any differently than the total gross amount of the assets, right? It's going to be, one pool that's going to be invested the same way, and it's going to give us the ability to spend in this manner.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe
Maybe a long meeting. Go ahead.
Well, we want to make sure it's clear and we can kind of meet offline too if we want to go through the numbers in more detail. And I do want to say that this 34 million is just outward grants money out the door. Whatever you all decide, this does not contemplate operations. The operations is, however, built into the model that you're about to see. So with that,
Well,
I'll turn it over to Nelia to kind of share more about the modeling so that we can maybe come back to this, Judge. So hopefully it'll kind of come together as the presentation comes along.
Thank you for that. So on the kind of following page, so because spending policy and how these decisions are made going forward will be a key input into exactly, as mentioned, how the portfolio is managed over time. We went through a number of kind of key questions with the investment committee to kind of help evaluate the trade-offs between choosing one spending policy over another and implications, again, on foundation expected term as well as total spending over time. So on this page, there are a lot of words, and I'll summarize it quickly, but really highlighting the key questions that we try to answer. So one, spending now versus spending over time is the question was, is the priority for One Ohio to maximize spending in the near term, or is it to maximize total spending over time? We heard from One Ohio that it is about both. So the focus is the cumulative impact, but recognizing that community needs are significant today. In terms of expected foundation life or term, whether there was an expected time horizon for the foundation to be able to fulfill its mission. The investment committee believes that the longer term portfolio sustainability or lasting over 30 years can be an important factor to fulfill One Ohio's mission over time. The third question was about whether spending should increase when the portfolio increases in value, for example, from performance on the investments or from incoming settlement inflows. So if there is a market downturn environment, should grant making increase, decrease, or stay the same? And we heard that there was a desire for spending to increase if the portfolio rises in value, as the investment program is there to serve the foundation's mission. However, spending should not drastically decrease in the event of a market downturn, or when the portfolio declines in value, as community need for some of the programs and organizations One Ohio's funds support are the same or even increase in those types of environments. The kind of fourth key consideration is about the consistency of annual spending. So how important is it that year over year spending or outflows out of the portfolio are broadly consistent? And we heard that consistency is important for the purposes of planning for your annual budget, but the flexibility is important as the foundation considers spending both on grant making and other kind of initiatives consistent with One Ohio's mission. And to help evaluate, again, those trade-offs, we try to support this all with analysis. And today you're only seeing a snippet of all of the charts and tables that the investment committee and staff have kind of worked through with us. But on the following page, sorry, can we flip to page 6? So given the understanding of One Ohio's goals, we went through the implications of different types of spending policies. So not just kind of determining a $34 million annual outflow, but looking at other ways to kind of come up with that number. And so we looked at different spending policies used by foundations and the implications of those. So on this page, we highlight 3. So the simple dollar amount, that's that $34 million every year, adjusted for inflation. So very predictable, easy to plan around. There's a simple percentage spending policy formula. So apply a percentage term on top of prior year's ending market value for the portfolio. So 5% of prior year's market value would determine your spending in the current year. That formula, although is now related to the portfolio value over time. So if there is a significant settlement inflow, or if the portfolio does particularly well in the market, you would spend more in the following year, and vice versa in scenarios where there's a market kind of downturn or inflows are lower than projected. Given kind of our understanding of One Ohio's goals, we consider something called this hybrid rule. So the hybrid spending rule kind of combines both the simple dollar and the simple percentage formulas to try to kind of balance the needs of consistency of spending over time, year over year, extending the potential foundation term, as well as improving kind of longer term or cumulative spending outcomes. So there's a lot of there's an equation on this page, but maybe I'll walk through it conceptually first. So in our modeling, we'll say 70% or almost 3/4 of your spending decision in any given year is based on what you spent in the prior year. Then it assigns a weight to that simple percentage rule. So 5% of your market value and 30% of that. And combines those two numbers. So again, what this does is seeks to provide consistency of spending year over year and adjust to the reality of where the portfolio market stands. So spending will increase as the portfolio grows in value, but not drastically so, and also won't fall substantially when market performance is more challenging. And to put all of these kind of considerations into practice on the following page, we model the current simple spending rule. So that's that fixed spend of $34 million adjusted for inflation on a go-forward basis, and a hybrid rule to help quantify kind of those trade-offs. So for the purposes of the numbers on this page, we move away from the all cash and fixed income portfolio with that long-term expected return of about 3% and assume a moderate risk portfolio. So a portfolio consisting of about 60% in global equities and 40% in bonds or fixed income, which would increase the expected return for the portfolio to 7%, so more than doubling the expected long-term return of the portfolio. So what this means is if you compare kind of the base case inflow scenario on this page versus what we showed previously, you see that the expected foundation term increases from 24 years with that current cash and fixed income portfolio to 37 years, not from any changes to spending, but just from expected market returns over the long term. But the key takeaways on this page are in kind of the yellow call out boxes. So one, we wanted to highlight that in the base case inflow scenario, so where you receive all $600 million that are projected to come in over time, in a fixed spending rule of $34 million a year, the foundation is expected to last a long time. You see that 37 years in the median outcome, but it is at more risk in a downside market environment where expected foundation term is projected to decrease by 10 years. Whereas the hybrid rule, because of that adjustment it makes for market value every year, is able to kind of lengthen the foundation term. In a more conservative inflow case, so where inflows are less than $600 million, in this case, they're $300 million over time. So it's the bottom part of the table on this page. The hybrid policy improves the expected foundation term and increases total spending by about $270 million over time. This really highlights the hybrid formula's goal of building more sensitivity to incoming assets as well as market performance. On the bottom of this page, we look at just kind of that base case inflow scenario to further highlight the impact of kind of the hybrid spending rules, projected ability to balance spending consistency, extend the foundation expected term. So on the left here, you see that hybrid formula in green. You see a higher market value over time and spend more over time. So on the right-hand side, where we highlight total spending plus ending market value at kind of year 40, where total spending total spending ability increases in that hybrid scenario with spending at $1.2 billion and $472 million kind of still in the portfolio also available for spending.
No, yeah, I'll just stop you there. Is there any questions in the room about any of these concepts? I know for me, when I look at that difference between the base case and the more conservative case, it really starts to beg the question of, will the settlements pay out the way they're projected or not? And I think that we all have a little trepidation around, we think they may not. And so I think I just wanted to highlight that difference between the base case and the more conservative case. I know we talk about them here as inflows, but the major inflows that we're really referring to is the different settlement agreements that we have set up as of right now.
Yeah, and we didn't want to just assume a rosy scenario, both from a market standpoint, which is why you see those market drawdown scenarios, but also from a One Ohio's inflows expectation standpoint, which is why we modeled multiple scenarios around those settlement inflows. Thanks for calling that out.
Okay, we can move ahead.
Great. Thank you. So kind of moving kind of on to what this kind of can look like for asset allocation. To help evaluate the spending trade-offs, we've been using what we call a 60-40 portfolio. So a portfolio composed of 60% in equities and 40% in fixed income. So based on BlackRock's long-term capital market assumptions or expectations for risk return over the long term, those are projections produced by our research team. That type of portfolio on a long-term basis has an expected return of 7.1% in the middle of this page and an expected risk of 11%. The ultimate portfolio, of course, should reflect the spending philosophy. So if the foundation were to consider a longer term time horizon with higher spending than what we've modeled today, the return target for the portfolio may be higher. So meaning a higher risk target could be appropriate. But since we heard that One Ohio is expecting a time horizon of 30 to 40 years and is considering a hybrid spending strategy on a go-forward basis, we think a moderate risk portfolio of 60-40 can provide that kind of balance between return seeking as well as risk taking. And to implement a risk budget, we consider a broad range of asset classes on the following page. Really considering an asset class's addition to the portfolio's expected return, risk, and an asset's diversification properties. So for One Ohio, we prioritize liquidity, meaning we only look at asset classes and ultimately investment vehicles to implement an asset allocation that can be turned into cash quickly, so within days, given the needs of the foundation. And so on this page, highlighting the three broad asset classes we're looking at. We're looking at global equities, so equities both in the US and outside of the US that are expected to be kind of the main driver of returns over the long term, as they have the highest expected return of all public market instruments. In green here, you see fixed income or bonds, so government bonds, credit, also expected to generate returns above cash and income, and potentially provide diversification in certain market downturn type events. Additionally, we look at something called diversifying strategies, which are expected to generate returns and take risks that are slightly different from those embedded in public equity and fixed income markets, but still really very much considering those in the context of maintaining a highly liquid allocation. On the following page, we demonstrate the potential benefits of including these types of diversifying strategies for the portfolio. So we would expect a slight increase in risk from 11 to 11.3%, and an increase in expected return of about 0.3%. Those sound like very small numbers, but over time, as those grow, you would expect an improvement in expected foundation term and total spending over time, as well as the goal being mitigating some of the risks embedded in traditional markets. And what that downside value at risk 95% metric, that is looking at VAR. So it's asking the question, what is the maximum loss I can expect over a 1-year period with 95% confidence? And you see that does not change kind of materially going from the 60-40 portfolio with equities and bonds to one that includes a 10% allocation to that diversifying strategies category. On the following page, I think this is our kind of summary page, but it also lays out kind of the decisions in front of you all today. The first really being agreeing on forward spending policy. where we've shown the current spending structure in a hybrid policy that's an option that seeks to balance consistent spending while building in some adaptability to market performance and sensitivity to settlement inflows to really seek higher spending over time. The second decision point is about the strategic asset allocation. So that balanced 60-40 equity bond type of portfolio, where in this table in the middle of this page, you see that the target allocation to diversifying strategies is stated as 0%, but those to be kind of considered over time and allowed in the sense of if you look at the minimums and maximums for each asset class at a maximum weight of 15%. And BlackRock would rebalance back to the permitted ranges for the foundation. And we would continue to review this asset allocation with the investment committee annually to make sure it is, still appropriate for the foundation, given everything kind of going on at the organization as well as in markets. And the decision point 3 is about implementation. So we propose implementing the asset allocation with commingled vehicles, meaning mutual funds and exchange traded funds or ETFs. So looking at very liquid types of investment vehicles, but did want to highlight that assets held in commingled vehicles may result in exposure to some of those settlement related companies. But we did want to make sure that it was kind of clear when we opened up the investment policy statement that where the portfolio is implemented through separately managed accounts, explicit restrictions prohibiting the investment in those companies can be considered. With that, maybe I'll pause there and ask Alicia or Amy and Jim if there is anything else you'd like to add here.
Thanks, Nalia. I'm looking at Jim. I know we just went through a lot of information and I really appreciate, I know many of you have seen this information either in the investment committee meetings themselves or our 2 workshops where we went through the information. But if there's any questions here, now is the time. And then but before we do, let's turn it over to Jim if you have.
No,
any.
I mean, I'd reiterate what you just stated. I mean, we've worked extremely hard the last couple of months, putting this all together, garnering feedback. I mean, we're kind of at go time, right? We're at go time to get this going. And my objective would be to, and I don't want to speak for other members of the investment committee because I think there are a couple of people here. We're missing one, but I really would love to get this implemented by sometime this summer. We still have a couple of things that need to be worked out. Who our custodial person is going to be, who's going to hold the assets. But ultimately, we've been going round and round and round for a while on this, and I think we're ready to get this implemented. I feel really confident about the work that we've done. I'm really confident about the hybrid approach to how we would approach spending, and I feel really good about how we're going to implement it from an investment standpoint. And I feel great about the partner we have in BlackRock. So the time is now to get this really over the goal line. So,
Question. Oh,
Go ahead.
BlackRock's going to be making our investments for us once we give them guidance, right? So what type of ETFs or mutual funds does BlackRock typically recommend for an institution of our bulk?
So I'll take that, and then Nalia or Jonathan or Ned. So, BlackRock actually, which is kind of nice, is in the business of, I don't say manufacturing because that's not the right word, but BlackRock has actually their own proprietary ETFs. They're called iShares, and iShares are probably the largest, most liquid form of ETFs, in the world. I mean, there are other.
I'm just adding, like, okay, which iShare typically would we find ourselves in?
Well, I mean, I think Nelia probably has we've actually seen an actual implementation, right? So it's going to be, the iShare S&P 500, the iShare Russell 1000 growth, the Russell 1000 value. So they're going to be broad-based market indexes on the equity side, and the same thing on the fixed income side, right? You'll see a core ETF for the fixed income. You might see a little bit of high yield smattered in. You'll see an ETF that will have some exposure to global equities. And they're very, one of the things that we've tried to do is BlackRock has been very competitive on their pricing, their advisory fee. And we also want to implement this, in my view, with an approach of trying to be the most cost effective as possible, right? And so I think, the ETF implementation typically ranges from about 6 to maybe 10 basis points on the actual ETF, the cost of that ETF. So, I mean, we're really going to be managing this portfolio for, well under probably 30 basis points, both from the advisory fee, and that's extremely competitive. But if you want an actual list of ETFs, we have a sample. I don't think it's in this slide, but we
kept it, I think, a little higher level for this one, Jim, but
Yeah. But I mean, we've seen it. It's pretty simple, right? I mean, I think there are probably 10 or 12 ETFs in the portfolio that we would implement it with. But they're just broad-based iShare ETFs for the most part. Is that right, Ned? You can.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. That's exactly right. So very much focused on liquidity. So these ETFs and mutual funds all can be redeemed for cash rather quickly, and really looking at kind of the entire kind of opportunity set in public equities, but very much very much so focused on kind of the benchmark as a risk proxy, if you will. So looking at that 60-40 as our baseline for measurement, of course, of performance as well. And we're happy to provide an example of the ETFs that would be in the portfolio as a follow-up.
So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to read a long motion that is recommended by investment committee. And so this will actually incorporate our investment policy. Again, now every year, you as a board will re-examine the investment policy. It might be a tweak of the ranges, but you might find yourself within the ranges, and so there's no tweaking. And I think I've mentioned before, I chair the investment committee at Kent State University, similar amount of money. Yeah, every year you look at your ranges, and that's when you do your adjustments if you want them. So here I will read the motion, and this is recommended by the investment committee, and then I'll need the motion in a second. So the motion is to approve investing foundation settlement dollars, both settlement dollars and bankruptcy proceeds, and the current balance of foundation's unrestricted investment proceeds, that's One Ohio's unallocated interest, through the BlackRock developed hybrid spending policy that seeks to use spending formula that identifies 70% of the prior year spending increased by inflation and 30% of 5% of the previous year's portfolio value. Motion to set into asset allocation, targeted ranges of 60% global equity and 40% global fixed income portfolio, and approve the mid and max ranges. Just a second. That's a mix and max. I think that's mid and max.
Mid and max.
Yeah, I want to make sure there was a typo. And the mid and max ranges presented, including a target of 60% of public equities, ranging from a minimum of 50% up to 70%, a target of 40% of public fixed income with a minimum of 15% up to 50%, and a target of 0% of diversified strategies with a minimum of 0% up to 15%, all which will be rebalanced to the permitted range at least quarterly and at best effort basis monitored by the investment committee. So I need a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Kidd, Larry Kidd, second by Jim White. And now we can have discussion. Judge Mattia.
Me again. Okay, so prior year spending. So what number are we starting with? Is it the 34 million, which was last year's spending?
So yes, and I was just waiting for Nalia and Ned to come
Yeah.
off mute if they wanted to speak to it more, because I know there's a lot of adjusted for inflation kind of things that go into it as well.
But the formula
Yeah.
is 70% of the prior year spending. So what is our base spending amount that we're starting with?
Yes, I think that's
It'll-
what. Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it'd be the spending that actually occurs this year. Right, so this is a forward-looking formula, so the spending for next year would be determined based on this year spending.
What is it?
A little high.
4 million times 70%.
And so I guess I think we just need to, so a little bit more elaboration, Nelia and Ned. So I know that on the slides, what we talked about earlier was, if you go back to my slide that I didn't, we couldn't quite kind of get on the same page there, Judge. If you look at this year's spending, we would be less than 34 million, but we could consider, you all have the flexibility to spend more, but hypothetically, based off of what she is saying, is you would take the 17 plus the 5, whatever that number is, with 23. Somebody help me, 22.
Free rounding.
Thank you. And then you would say 70% of that number would start the formula, but you all would have the ability to adjust the formula as needed to kind of kick us off, but it would be that 70% of that 23. And that would be what you could add to the next year. But as you can already tell, we're already set to spend more than that. So there's going to be work by the investment committee to kind of rebalance the numbers from there. And Jim, is there a better way to kind of explain this kind of bridge from what we've already allocated to the future of this formula that will need to kind of happen?
Yeah, no, I mean, I almost think, quite honestly, that it has to look at just the 34 million, even the unallocated, part. I think that needs to be probably included, the unallocated part into that calculation, right? Because we're starting with kind of 34 billion. And then as we go out, we can then look at to see, okay, what are we really spending? Is that kind of a true number, and then set that as kind of the number kind of going forward that we do the calculation off of.
Can you just change the word spending to allocation and make it simpler?
Sure. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
So in other words, on my opening line where I said 70% of prior year spending, you want that to be 70% of prior year's allocation? Is that what you're?
I think that would make it easier than doing this complex problem, which is a lot of variables based upon, I mean, it really is up to the grantees how soon they get their act together to ask for the money. I mean, let's just make it a simple formula. We know we allocated $34 million the prior year. Frankly, I think that number's too high for this purpose, and I would ask that we delay this vote until we, just do a simple spreadsheet, like a 34 million, 30 million, 25 million, and see where that takes us in 20 years, given this proposed 60-40 plan with expected rate of returns that they've displayed to us. I don't feel comfortable voting on this without more information, and that's my point.
I mean, listen, I mean, we have run this and modeled this till the cows come home. I mean, honestly, and I'm gonna push back at
Yeah.
you a little bit and say that, you know, we have modeled this. And, you know, we've garnered, I think, a lot of consensus around this hybrid spending policy, right? For the reasons that Nelia just discussed in terms of an actual simple spending policy, right? Now, I think what we're struggling with is what is the number that we're going to use as the spending to calculate, right? To calculate the hybrid approach. I'm really comfortable using that $34 million, and whether we call it, you know, allocated spending or whatever, let's just call it, you know, allocated spending, right? The allocation of the spending this year or next year will be $34 million. We could start that as the baseline versus what we've actually spent. But in terms of, you know, running numbers on a simple spreadsheet, I mean, we've done that.
Has anybody looked at the difference between 30 and 34 million as to what it shows
100,
long term?
100%.
Doesn't the board deserve to see those numbers?
We just went through that, Judge.
We did.
We didn't?
Could we go to page
Jim, would you like us to go
7?
to 7? I think that's actually those exact
Yeah,
exact numbers,
sorry,
like 34
I
and
may have
31. Yeah.
added extra kind of confusion. In our modeling for the hybrid formula, we incorporate those projections that Alicia has spoken to. So the prior grant cycles have been modeled in as kind of knowns, and the future is kind of what we're talking about when we look at these new kind of spending policies. So for the hybrid, we are using that 34 million as a starting point. And if you look at kind of what is actually kind of like annual, what does the average annual community investment look like in a hybrid spending formula on average? On the top of this page, you see that 31 million. So even though kind of there is this formula to weigh both prior year spending at 34 million to start, of course, that'll change over time. That formula will adjust for every year. But also, if you kind of look at on average in real dollars, so adjusted for inflation, in a hybrid formula, it is around that 34 million, but of course would be slightly higher, slightly lower, depending on market kind of conditions, settlement inflows, and kind of where you are in that journey over time.
Maybe I'd call attention to kind of a worst case or a bad scenario. There's probably always a worst case of one Ohio does not receive all of the spending it might expect, of half of expected spending, as well as a market drawdown. And you can see that in the more conservative case lines, the fixed spend is about a 17-year horizon, with a total impact of about $662 million. Using the hybrid formula, you get a little bit more sort of sustained spending, and so you have longer term and then higher spending of about $1 billion kind of in total impact.
I'm going to jump back in and again, with the use of the words spending versus allocation. So spending actually incorporates funds that might have been allocated in year 1, year 2, spent in year 3. So if you're talking about year 3, it is a different number than what a year 2 allocation might be, because as you know, those allocations might be over a 3-year period. So I think we have to keep the term spending in, because that actually gets back down to what actually went out the door by all prior years. Now, I just want to remind everybody that the board every year will vote on grants. So it's good that we have an investment policy, but at the end of the day, you're not leaving your responsibility, and you're not negating your future responsibility to vote on the budget again, vote on grant allocations, and the actual grantees themselves. So we still have all those processes in place again. So as you watch the formula in place, you still have additional checks and balances. So we do have a motion by Mr. Kidd, Larry Kidd, second by Jim White. we've had additional discussion. Again, I'm going to do a roll call. I'm just looking for, there's no hands up. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call if, okay, go ahead.
I'll just give a second for everybody virtually to get themselves off of mute. Director Baker, Director Claymeyer, Director Terry Johnson, Director Rob Blaisdell, Director Tyler Lee,
Yes.
Director Stone, D Stone, sorry.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
yes.
Director Mattia.
No.
Director Scott Silak,
Yes.
Director Greta Johnson,
Yes.
Director Hohaddle,
Yes.
Director Piccirilli, Director Dodge, did anybody hear that?
I don't know what she said.
Director Dodge, are you still on? Okay. Director Powell? Director Where's Vicky?
Yes.
Director Mason?
Yes.
Director St. John?
Yes.
Director Mayer?
Yes.
Director Amen?
Yes.
Director Bruce?
Yes.
Director Hondrew?
Yes.
Yes.
Director Whiston? Director Ayers?
Yes.
Director Gregoire?
Yes.
Director Kidd?
Yes.
Director Lee? Director White?
Yes.
Director Radcliffe?
Yes.
Director Roizen?
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to check real quick if Monica Rob Blaisdell is on still.
Any legislative board members? So I want everybody to know, even though we had more than, we had the 18 we need, we had like, I think 19. The problem is, as you know, every vote must have a concurring member of each class. We have no legislative class voting at this point. There's a 4, that's Evan, Rachel, Monica, and I'm trying to think, and Senator Johnson. So bottom line, we'll have to push this to next meeting unless one of them are on. We just didn't hear them. Pardon? Yeah. At the end of the meeting, we'll take a look at it again if we have the customer. The motion fails for lack of meeting the requirements of the memorandum of understanding that each class must affirm it. Thank you very much to everybody. And these are complicated. We've sort of joked about this over the years, but those who drafted the MOU put some interesting turns in it. So thank you very much to all. So the next item I have on the agenda that is a special presentation on our public education. We're grateful we're grateful to the investment committee, and all these committees have been working pretty hard. So now I'd like to turn the investment committee and Amy Shadwick for an update on our public education efforts.
Good morning, everyone. Is my mic coming through okay? Give me the high sign too if you get any chats from folks, but no one's ever told me that they can't hear me, so shouldn't be a problem. Well, I am super excited to give an update on the public education work as Chairman Mason set up for me this morning. As I get started, I do want to make one call out that you'll see the photographer in the room. I will actually announce all of our partners in a little bit, but the photographer is from one of our partner agencies. Here taking photographs today about the public education work. So we have it to use moving forward. So just wanted to call that out in case there were any questions about why we were here taking lots of pictures. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide for me. What really I want to do today and what we want to spend time doing on the presentation is really just bring everybody up to speed on where we've been and where we're going with the public education campaign. We're going to give you the opportunity to hear from two of the subcontractors and actually dig into some of the work that's been underway. And then also wrap up the presentation by spending a few minutes to talk to you about how you may help support the work. So hopefully you all received Alicia's emails and you saw the announcement, the formal announcement about our partnership with the state of Ohio. I know we do have a few newer board members. So just to level set, the state of Ohio actually put out an RFP for a statewide nonprofit to partner for public education related to cannabis. So the goal of the partner was to create 4 campaigns by June 30th, 2027, and to have 4 campaigns, one focused on pregnant women, 2 campaigns focused on youth, and 1 focused on employers. And so, as you all know by that announcement, One Ohio was actually awarded that RFP. We went through a really intense, rigorous, quick timeline. But the most exciting thing that I want to underscore on this slide, this really shows all of the high-level milestones that we've accomplished since the day the RFP was released, November 5th. To our partnership announcement, which was on Monday. So really the first steps, which we counted January 1st, January 8th, since that's when the contract was signed, to today was just 123 days. So just want to underscore that as we kind of walk you through some of these milestones. So the other thing I'll call out specifically on this slide, the step number 5, the SIP stands for the Strategic Implementation Plan. So the state required a submission of a strategic implementation plan and a fundraising plan within the first 45 days of signing the contract. That document is several dozen pages long. We did attach it to your packet, but it really goes through the framework of all 4 campaigns, really underscoring that each of these campaigns will be research driven. So the messaging and the creative will all be tested. They will all be research informed. And then we will continue to evaluate the success of the campaigns. I'm a PR communications professional by training. And so mass media campaigns are great. But the most important thing with this campaign is actually being able to see change. So are we changing people's knowledge, attitudes, and ultimately their behaviors? Change behaviors takes a little bit of time, right? But as we start this work, are we ultimately changing people's knowledge, attitudes, and then ultimately their behaviors, hopefully our young people in particular, around choosing to use or not use marijuana? So I'm going to go to the next slide because this is really what we've been up to. And then the next slide really shows how we've been doing it and how we will do the work. So we've been really fortunate to partner with an amazing team of subcontractors to really bring this work to life. In just a moment, you're going to get to hear from 2 of those subcontractors, but you may notice on the virtual attendance today, in those attendees, that there's some faces that may not be familiar to you. Those are actually representatives from each of these agencies. We wanted to invite them to be part of this presentation, but some are not here locally. So they were able to join virtually and also have them to be here with us today in case you all have any questions. So the Truth Initiative is our advisor and our evaluation partner. Real Art, which is the folks who are in the room today as well. They are our communications and creative partner. Dalton is our media buyer. CMR Consulting is providing the project management for the work. Public Opinion Strategies is also another one of our research and evaluation partners. Red Brick Strategies is our fundraising partner. And then Mad Global and Connie, who we've worked with previously as well, is our communications and earned media partner. So that is really, as you look across what we've been able to accomplish in a short amount of time, how we're accomplishing the work. If you want to go to the next slide for me, please. And before I turn it over really to the fun part for our subcontractors to really dig in, just want to, again, underscore what you saw and what we're setting up here is really, we have spent, the first few months making sure that we're setting up a structure that we can deliver these campaigns over the life of the contract. Remember, 4 campaigns by June 30th. So that's really a year from now. But we feel confident that we can get there with the partners and the great work that's already underway. So we've created creative briefs. We're working on that stakeholder engagement. We're going to talk with you a little bit more about that in a bit. And then we feel like we're positioned to launch these campaigns successfully and to activate with the media and hopefully ultimately to activate in the community. So where we decided to start was actually the pregnancy campaign. So the first campaign that we're working on is targeted at pregnant women or women who hope to be pregnant soon, and educating them around cannabis. So what we wanted to do today was just to peel back the curtain a little bit and give you an opportunity to hear a little bit more about the work that is underway with the pregnancy campaign. So first, I'd like to turn it over to Neil Newhouse and Luke Jackson from Public Opinion Strategies, and they're going to give a brief overview on some of the really, really interesting research that we've done to date around pregnant women and how, their thoughts and digging in around their current thoughts around marijuana use during pregnancy. So Neil and Luke, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. We go to the next slide for a sec. So we have done a number of different projects for One Ohio, starting back in 24, actually. But now the focus is, since we did the kickoff, now the focus is pregnant women or women who hope to be pregnant. As part of this, we've done most recently focus groups and a statewide survey. The statewide survey was of women who are pregnant or hope to be pregnant or plan to be pregnant in the next few years. The focus groups were among women who are pregnant and or plan to be pregnant. And Luke has also done some in-depth individual interviews with OBGYNs, midwives, doulas, etc., on the same topic. So we just wanted to briefly cover this most recent research. It's a kind of a glancing blow at the summary, but we're going to try to go through this quickly. Luke's going to go through his focus group summary. He is the one who moderated these and did the IDIs, and I'll go through the data from the polling itself. So if we go to the next slide, and then Luke take over.
Sounds good. Thanks, Neil. So from our focus groups, we really found that women approach marijuana use during pregnancy from a place of normalization. It's really viewed as a common everyday substance on similar levels to alcohol and tobacco. It's just marijuana is a part of everyday life, especially among women that are marijuana users in these groups. But that being said, there is a lot of uncertainty, and there's limited clear and consistent understanding of the risks associated with marijuana use. We heard a lot of these women in the groups describe marijuana as a natural substance. It comes from the ground, it comes from the earth, so it must be safer. And we also found that the decision making by these women is highly individualized. It's a lot of it's shaped by their personal experiences. They talk about friends or family that, you know, have used marijuana to help with anxiety symptoms, nausea symptoms during pregnancy, and that's what they revert back to. So there really is a belief that risk is conditional and can be managed through moderation. Like if I use a smaller amount of marijuana while I'm pregnant, it might not be as risky. So next slide, please. So by the end of our focus groups, and you know, each of these groups lasted about 2 hours. By the end of them, most women ultimately conclude that using marijuana during pregnancy is not worth the risk. So this conclusion is really driven by the concerns. We tested a bunch of different concerns and risks that marijuana use can have for the pregnant mother and the baby. But it's driven by concerns about effects on the developing brain, potential birth outcomes, stillbirth, low birth weight, things like that. And then also the long-term effects that marijuana can have on the children, such as, you know, anxiety, attention issues later in life. But the understanding these women have of these risks is pretty inconsistent and is not always clearly defined. We heard a lot of women, you know, when we were working through these different risks, they talked about, you know, they're not being sure whether these risks are actually true, but if they were, they'd be pretty concerning to them. And a lot of these perceptions of these risks is really influenced by anecdotal evidence. Again, they talk about family friends that, you know, my cousin smoked their entire pregnancy and the baby turned out completely fine. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that's they're, you know, thinking about when thinking about these risks. So even when they're presented with this credible fact-based information, some women continue to view this risk as conditional and pretty manageable. And the information we provide reinforces the existing beliefs that these women have more than it changes them. So next slide. We also found that we really face quite a fragmented information environment. These women rely on such a multitude of different sources for pregnancy advice in general, and also about marijuana in pregnancy. They rely on doctors, Google, social media influencers, pregnancy apps that they might use, and also their own personal networks, family, friends. But we found that OBGYNs and primary care providers tend to be the most trusted source among all of those. So that being said, information, when they do get it, it's constantly cross-checked across these different sources. They're not just relying on doctors or just relying on Google. They're using multiple sources to check the information that they get. But ultimately, they're defaulting back to their own judgment and a lot of advice from friends and family. And then we also found there's an inconsistent gap and absent conversations with healthcare providers. You know, these women aren't asking about marijuana use with their doctors when they go to visit. And we also found that doctors aren't actively bringing up the topic of marijuana usage during pregnancy when they do visit these women. Next slide. So turning to our messaging, we found that we got to ground our messaging in 3 kind of key themes, core themes. So women are motivated to do what's best for their baby. They're open to information, but it's got to be credible and it's got to be relevant to them. And the message has got to align with how these women perceives the risk of marijuana. And then next slide. So our effective messaging is really got to clearly define the risk and explain why and how marijuana affects their baby, especially when it comes to the effects on brain development and other long-term outcomes like anxiety or attention problems later in life for their kids. We got to directly address the perception that risk can be managed through moderation, really that no amount of marijuana use during pregnancy is safe. We got to reinforce this information again through multiple channels because these women aren't just, you know, listening to one information source. So we really got to, that'll reflect how women actively cross-check these sources of the information. And then we got to encourage women, drive women to consult their doctor and reinforce that role that doctors are the most trusted messenger, OBGYNs, physicians, they're the most trusted source for these women. And then our messaging's also got to maintain a supportive and non-judgmental tone that respects the women and the mother's autonomy. So those are some high-level findings from our group. So I'll flip it back over to Neil to talk through some of our findings from the poll.
Great. If we go to the next slide. So we did these focus groups and we did the polling with an eye towards, and solely with an eye towards, what message do we help do we think is most effective in urging these women not to use marijuana? What information can we provide our team, Real Art, et cetera, about what works and what doesn't work, and what specific messages do we think we should land on? So let's go to the next slide and talk about some of these poll findings. So we screened using the following question. I'm currently pregnant, which is 22% of the population. I'm not currently pregnant, but I'm trying to become pregnant. I'm not currently pregnant, but plan on a child next few years, and I've thought about having children in the future. So these are all women between the ages of 18 and really kind of 45 who are either pregnant or are planning or hoping to be pregnant in the future. Next slide. So we asked about their approach to pregnancy. 34% describe themselves as very cautious, 46% mostly cautious. So that's 80%, and 20% say they're either somewhat or not very cautious. What was interesting is the women who are currently pregnant were, not surprisingly, the most cautious, as opposed to everybody else we interviewed. The next slide. This reinforces the points that Luke was making. There is really uncertainty about what to expect. On the left-hand side, some pregnancy advice feels outdated or exaggerated. 75% of these women agreed. It's hard to know which pregnancy risks are truly serious. 62% agree. And then there is not sufficient research to determine what actions a pregnant woman might take that are safe or unsafe. 54% agree. So there's a lack of education among these women that we can fill a gap for. The next slide. When asked, how concerned are you about the health effects of each of the following during pregnancy? Extremely concerned, very concerned, not very, not at all concerned. I've charted here those who are extremely concerned or very concerned. Alcohol use, 76% concerned. Tobacco, 76%. Vaping and e-cigs, 72%. Nicotine patches, 71%. Marijuana and cannabis at 61%. This falls under alcohol, under tobacco, and behind it is over-the-counter pain relievers, Tylenol, etc. And 31% of our sample of these women say yes, they currently use marijuana. So that shows a real significant challenge we face here, which is a third of these women use cannabis, and yet they're less concerned about the use of cannabis than they are alcohol, tobacco, or these other uses. Next slide. Agree or disagree? Do you agree or disagree with the following question? There is no proven harm from occasional marijuana use during pregnancy. Again, reinforcing the point that Luke made. Total agree or disagree, 26% agreed, 44% disagree, the rest had no idea. But among pregnant women, 1/3 of pregnant women agree that there is no harm from occasional use in early pregnancy, which is obviously a real risk. Next slide. So we asked them, what concerns you the most about potential of using marijuana during pregnancy? And we listed a number of different options. What came out on top is marijuana use during pregnancy has been linked to an increased risk of stillbirth that concerns 68% of our sample, has been linked to premature birth, 67%, that marijuana use can affect the baby's brain development, 63%, and that children exposed to marijuana in the womb may have higher rates of attention problems, etc., 60%. These were the top. This is what really concerns these women about using marijuana. So again, we need to kind of reinforce that these are potential outcomes if they continue to use it. Next slide. We then tested messages that we want to probably potentially use in the campaign. And we're now getting closer to what could actually be on the air or on social media. When it comes to your baby's health, even small risks can matter. Avoiding marijuana during pregnancy is the safest choice you can make. 51% found that a convincing message. However you use it, marijuana reaches your baby during pregnancy. There's no safe amount and no safe way, 50%. We found during our testing that some of these folks believe that using edibles is just as safer than smoking marijuana during pregnancy. The third message here is probably the winner when you look at everything across the board. You want what's best for your baby. That's why it's important to know that even small amounts of marijuana may affect their developing brain. If you're using marijuana to manage symptoms, talk to your doctor about safer options for both you and your baby. Our polling and our focus groups indicate that these women are significantly more interested in the baby, in the health of the baby, than they are their own health. That's number one. Secondly, we reinforce in this that even small amounts can affect a developing brain, which was important to these women. Third, we want to drive these women to talk to their doctors. That's the number one source of credible information is their doctor. And we make it, in the last line, for both for you and your baby, we make it about the two of them, especially their baby. Let's go to the next slide. So we asked how convincing these messages are, how believable, and how respectful they are to women. If you look at the middle message is exactly one we just went through. 49% convincing, 39% believable, and respectful to women, 42%. It more or less ends up on top here. So the next slide. So just a few takeaways. There is that significant uncertainty as to what to expect. They're more focused on themselves than on their baby rather than themselves. They think using marijuana in moderation is okay, or if doctor prescribed. People thought, hey, if the doctor prescribed for medical marijuana, I should be able to use it during pregnancy. The messages should drive women to their doctors, as OBGYNs, primary care physicians, are considered the most trusted sources of information. Next slide. So it gives you an idea of, we use this information to provide guidance to our media team for the advertising that we'll be doing on in our earned media, as well as social media and maybe TV or radio. So that's just a glimpse of the kind of research we're doing and how it's hoping to guide what we're putting on the air and what we're telling these women.
Can I ask a quick question? I really appreciate the research and what you found as far as credible messages and what hopefully will influence the future to reduce risk for women. Did you also get any themes from the focus group around why women were using marijuana? Did that come up at all, or the polling that you did?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll do mine. I'll do the polling, and I'll let Luke do his stuff. The most common reason was to relieve anxiety and stress, and to relieve nausea symptoms from these women. Luke?
Yeah, it was similar stuff from the focus groups. They want to relieve their nausea. They have anxiety about giving birth or just being pregnant. So that was another big reason. And also, a lot of these women that are smoking were smoking and using marijuana prior to becoming pregnant, and it's just harder for them to stop once they've already started, and then they just continue into their pregnancy.
I have a question as well. Is there any consideration for prevention campaigns to target OBGYNs? I know in our area, we're involved in a Store It Safe campaign, which is through the American Association of Pediatrics, and it targets the medical community to have conversations about safe gun storage for suicide prevention. I would just be concerned that focusing primarily or solely on women having conversations with their physicians, that those might not happen due to stigma and shame, fear of judgment, So I was just wondering if there was any marketing considerations, like I said, similar to the Store It Safe initiative, which is a evidence-based prevention strategy to target those OBs and have them initiate the conversations with all women rather than just relying on these messages getting to women who use cannabis during pregnancy.
That's,
Yeah,
that's
Oh, go
that's
ahead,
act-
Neil.
That's actually an interesting point because in the data we did ask that in the data. We asked, have you ever discussed marijuana use with a healthcare provider during your prenatal care while trying to conceive? 26% said yes. Only 26% said yes. And they strongly advised against it. Another 10% said yes, it was something to discuss further. 9% said it's a personal decision for me to make. And 4% said yes, they didn't give a clear recommendation. When I read this data, my first inclination is, well, hell, we need to do, in addition to talking to women who are trying to conceive or are pregnant, we need to talk to these OBGYNs and get them to talk to the women because we need them to be the source of information, our advocates. And so we went further and asked the next question. If your doctor or OBGYN does not bring up marijuana use during pregnancy, what does that suggest to you? 44% say it's something they assume I already know about. 16% say they may not have strong concerns about it, and 7% say it's not a major risk. Not talking about it is almost acquiescence, on the part of these women who want to smoke marijuana.
And I'll just add one piece and then over to you, Larry. We see you have a question as well. So to that point, we actually are doing a lot of work behind the scenes as well, actually reaching out to the associations with that include OBGYNs, midwives, doulas, nurse practitioners, so we can start to have conversations. So the first campaign and the paid advertising will start with pregnant women as that target audience, and that is where the messaging will be targeted. But know that we are also simultaneously having conversations and connecting with those groups as well. So we can see as we build out that campaign, we've definitely already identified that OBGYNs are probably the next target audience for this campaign. And also where the other piece you'll see is we certainly need experts as well and people who can speak to this, and that also that women will trust that we can add to the voice in the campaign. So all great points and all work underway. Larry?
Hi, Neil, Larry Kidd. Were there any correlations between marijuana use in pregnant women or women that want to become pregnant and alcohol?
Oh yes. Oh yes. I mean, yeah, absolutely. It was alcohol, it was tobacco, no question about it. The women who are using alcohol or tobacco are much more likely to be also using marijuana.
No, I guess my question is, were there women that would not use alcohol or tobacco during pregnancy, but would use marijuana during pregnancy?
Well, I think you go back to the question we asked about how concerned are you? These women were significantly more concerned about use of alcohol and use of tobacco than they were use of marijuana. So yes, there's some evidence, it's not direct, but there's some evidence that they might be willing to stop alcohol or tobacco, but maybe not stop marijuana use during
so that would indicate if the messaging is properly crafted, then they would be less likely to use marijuana if they're already not using alcohol or tobacco during pregnancy.
Yeah, and one of the messages we tested, let me find it. Actually, we tried to get at that exactly. Let's see. It was one of our top scoring messages, which is, and this I think gets at your point. Like alcohol and tobacco, marijuana carries real risk for your baby's developing brain. Avoiding it during pregnancy is the safest way to protect their future. So we're thinking the same thing here in terms of linking it to alcohol and tobacco and trying to move these women away from marijuana use.
Good morning. This is Dawn Tyler Lee. I have a question about actually, I have two questions. What percentage of women who participated in this research were African American?
It was actually that's a good question. It was actually higher. We found, first of all, we do a statewide poll of these women. There's nothing to validate our sample in terms of age, income, education level, et cetera, even ethnicity. Our survey was, let's see. Oh gosh. Survey was 21% African American, 67% white, 6% Hispanic. So the minority numbers of women interviewed in this project were higher than percentage-wise were higher than their composition of adults statewide.
Can you go back one slide? There was a message, a proposed message that I wanted to make sure I was getting the wording right around. Messaging, driving women to doctors and OBGYNs. My concern about that approach is there are recent studies that show that women, Black women in particular, don't always trust their OBGYNs or their primary care providers or feel supported and heard by them. And so I was pleased to hear Amy say that some of our outreach will also include doulas and midwives and some other birthing partners. I would encourage us to really hone in on what some of those other trusted people, who some of those trusted people could be, because I don't know if doctors and OBGYNs exclusively are going to be able to share that messaging with women who don't historically trust some of those folks.
And again, that's exactly what we found in the data. And I highlighted that in our larger presentation that we gave the One Ohio team, that women, African American minority women, were just a little less likely to mention OBGYNs and were dependent on family and relatives and other sources of information, and a little less on OBGYNs.
And that was something, Neil mentioned earlier, all these interviews I'm doing, one-on-one interviews with OBGYNs, midwives, and there are a lot of OBGYNs that recognize that too and say they get, some resistance among African-American women. They recognize they're not, as seen as in a trusted light as others might. So.
Well, and the other thing, and didn't one of the women say, it was from the focus groups, Lou, an African-American woman said that she wanted to hear information from someone who looked like her.
Yeah, I think somebody did say that.
Which is, in other words, another African-American doctor, someone who's credible, who has the same interest she does, but basically who says look like her, which means skin color.
And Daphne has a question.
I actually just wanted to add to Alicia and maybe Dawn's a little bit. When we're targeting the OBGYNs, knowing a couple of things about our population, they're going to the doctors that are also giving them the recommendations, not prescriptions for these things. And so knowing that these doctors themselves have 1 hour of education, I don't know how much I want to rely on us targeted. Go talk to your doctor when the doctors are the ones that are saying also have the misinformation.
And I think what's important here too is, and we completely agree with you, because we in my experience with my OBGYN as a Black woman, it is, I understand, just that the time and just kind of really the trust factors are always an issue. And so what we are doing is taking all of this polling data. So this doesn't contemplate necessarily what we will do. This is our research of what we found when we talked to folks. And so we're going to take all this information and develop a strategy that could include OBGYNs. It will include midwives, doulas. It'll also include what we learned, a trusted friend. Women have circles that they use and really connect to their friends in a way that will be important in this. And it's really about, really encouraging and empowering women to have a conversation. At this point is where we're landing. And whoever that trusted person is, and for some it was a pediatrician. They felt more comfortable to talk to their pediatrician through their kid's doctor about the impacts. It is varying across the different groups of who do you trust? And I think it was different for white women, Black women, Hispanic women. I think it was different for those who are in a rural setting versus an urban setting. And we'll take all of that information and build personas, which we won't, I don't think, have time to go through today. But we had Ken on the line and was going to talk to you a little bit about how we're using AI. And I know my AI friends we were excited to kind of show you how we're taking all this research, putting it into an AI tool and blending not only kind of Nielsen and marketing data with the actual survey data, focus group data. And we've built out 4 personas, and we want to understand how to talk best to each of those personas, whether it's an age persona, young versus an older woman who's pregnant, and then a geographic persona, whether you're in an urban setting or a rural setting. And we're going to be able to message and tweak what we say to all of these groups using the data that you just saw here, and really partner with the right people to get to folks, because we can't trust 100% the OBGYNs to do this work for us. We can't trust one group to kind of deliver it all. But I think that there's like a mixture of that, and then a kind of a community conversation that we could start, not only with the OBGYNs, but with the midwives and the doulas. We've talked to our health departments. We've talked to our prevention coalitions across the state. We're starting to work to kind of connect with our ADAMH board. So there's a lot of folks that are going to come together and really share a message jointly, hopefully, to the extent they're willing. And so I know we don't have enough time to go through. So sorry, Ken, we don't get to see your AI presentation today, but let's table that for another meeting, because I think it's worth seeing one day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add just one more thing that I think what's super exciting about what we're doing from an analytics and an AI perspective is, with AI, there's a lot of opportunity for AI to, if used irresponsibly, to introduce bias and to kind of mirror what you see just repeated out there in the world. I think what's really, really cool that we're doing is we are using AI to harness these thousands of pages of research findings that Neil and team are doing, and we're doing from a audience research perspective, and really anchor everything that we're doing in hard empirical fact, stripped of any bias. So that's what I'm super excited about. Looking forward to sharing that with you in more detail in coming meetings, but thank you so much.
Thanks, Ken. And I know, Amy, I think we're going to shift to Sarah, who is back with us from maternity leave. So everybody say hi to Sarah. Welcome back. And I think she was just going to say a few words about the survey at your table.
Yes, great to be back. I'll be with y'all in person here at one of our future board meetings. So for those of you that are in person, there is a quick fundraising engagement survey for you to fill out that was included in the board packet, because hopefully after hearing all of this great presentation, you're as excited as I am about the future of our public education work. And obviously our work with pregnant women, very timely for me, as I now have a little 3-month-old. So your input in the survey will help us to build a coordinated statewide private sector fundraising strategy for our public education work, because as you can probably tell, there's a lot we can do here and there's a lot of need. So please fill out that survey, return your completed survey to either Alicia or Amy before you leave. For those of you that are joining us virtually today, we will get you an electronic version out of the survey so we can have your thoughts and gauge your willingness to help us in our fundraising around our public education work. So you'll hear more from me and our fundraising team as we go about this. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah. So with that, I think I'll turn it back to, and sorry for kind of the conversations here. We wanted to make sure that we can circle back to the earlier issue that was on the table around the investment strategy. So I will turn it back over to the chair, and we would ask for kind of an adjustment to the agenda to circle back to that item now that we have our folks on the line.
As indicated before, we did not have all levels, as you know, every level has to vote to approve a policy issue, and we didn't have anybody from the legislature on. So actually what I needed now is revisit the issue of approving an investment committee. So I will read it again, and I'll need the motion and a second, and then we can have another vote since we have a legislator on the line. So what I'll need is a motion to approve the investing foundation settlement dollars, both settlement and bankruptcy proceeds, and the current balance of foundation's unrestricted investment proceeds, One Ohio's unallocated interest, to the BlackRock developed hybrid spending policy that seeks to use a spending formula that identifies 70% of the prior year's spending increased by inflation and 30% of 5% of the previous year's portfolio market. In addition to that, it'll be a motion to set asset allocation target ranges from 60% global equity and 40% global fixed income portfolio, and improve the mid and max ranges presented, including one, a target of 60% of public equities ranging from minimum of 50% up to 70%. Next, a target of 40% of public fixed income with a minimum of 15% up to 50%, and a target of 0% of diversified strategies with a minimum of 0% up to 15%, all of which will be rebalanced to the permitted ranges at least quarterly on the best effort basis monitored by the investment committee. So a motion and a second. Motion by Jim White. Second by Ted. Is there any discussion? And again, let's do the roll call vote, starting with the legislator.
All right. Director Monica Robb Blaisdell.
Yes.
Director Rachel Baker. Director Claymire. Director Terry Johnson. Director Don Tyler Lee.
Yes.
Director D Stone.
Yes.
Director Mattia.
No.
Director Silac.
Yes.
Director Greta Johnson. Director Keith O'Hoddle.
Yes.
Director Piccirilli.
You're out.
Piccirilli, got it. Director Dodge. Director Scotty Powell. Director Wierzbicki.
Yes.
Director Mason.
Yes.
Director St. John. Director Greta Mayer. Director Amen.
Yes.
Director Bruce.
Yes.
Director Handrew. Director Whiston. Director Ayers.
Yes.
Director Gregoire.
Yes.
Director Kidd.
Yes.
Director Lee. Director White.
Yes.
Director Radcliffe. Director Roizen.
Motion fails. It'll be taken up at the next June meeting based on the chairman. Madam Chair.
Now we're visiting
15
another
votes.
director.
Yeah. So, and I'll reassess it, but I'm pretty positive on that. So next item, then we do have the Audit and Finance Committee report. I know Evan isn't with it. Who's doing this? Are you doing the report? You'll need a microphone.
I'll see that.
Wireless.
I will just,
Be succinct.
yes, I will just say a comment or two and then turn it over to David. So if you want to go to the next slide. Just always a good grounding as we start these conversations about the budget. Just a reminder of our purpose set by you as board members to ground us for these conversations around promoting, advocating, and funding much of which you directly just heard about with the presentation from BlackRock, with which hopefully investing those dollars help us to fund and fund even more and fund even longer. And then the public education program that you just heard about hopefully gives us the opportunity to promote health and safety and have an even healthier state. So as you can imagine, not only are there programmatic impacts when you think of public education and our investing partner with BlackRock, there's also budget impacts. So I'm going to turn it over to David Kaplan. He's our outsourced CFO from Panoramic Solutions, and he is going to walk you through the proposed budget amendment that has also already been reviewed and recommended by the Audit and Finance Committee. I'll just share that on Evan's behalf since he is not able to be here with us. So I'll turn it over to David.
Thanks, Amy. And I will also try to be succinct as we go along here. So, a quick reminder for the budget amendment itself is that when we set the budget, it was at a moment in time. And that moment in time didn't take into account yet with things that we knew were coming and that impact, our ability to operate this year. And really that crosses three elements. The first is the statewide initiative and all the public education work that the board approved to pursue at the end of the year. The second and third, which are both operating elements, is what you just heard from BlackRock and the choice for the OCIO. So the implementation of investments comes with costs. And the third is the regional support and operating capacity in order to do all of these things, and to continue to support the regions as the cycle grants grow. Whoops. Need to keep my hands down. Is to make sure that we have the resources in place like those that we just talked about at the beginning of the meeting to make sure that we're able to best serve our communities in total. Let's go to the next slide. And a quick reminder just on the process itself for the statewide initiative. So I'm going to focus on this first. Is that we were approved to pursue that opportunity, knowing a few things. The first was that there was $20 million of funding available for it for the 2 fiscal years, ending in June 2028. So so essentially, less than 2 years from now, and that our operating budget didn't plan for this because we had not yet been selected, right? We didn't know what we didn't know at that point. Finally, the reminder when we did pursue it was the knowledge that we had to have at least 10% matching funds from One Ohio, and that was the minimum threshold. And so we'll go over those numbers in a little bit as well. It's a little bit higher than that, but we were selected, obviously, which is really exciting. And let's go to the next slide. Too much probably words for everyone to read on this page. So, I will, summarize it by saying that, ultimately there were a lot of requirements from the state of Ohio. So what you are going to see in this budget amendment reflects all of the things that have already been approved by the state of Ohio, including the percentage breakdown, the vendors that are pre-approved, the total budget, the matching funds, the timeline, and so all of these things are put into place. And I will say that, I'll say maybe 2 or 3 key facts. The first, the total matching funds and operational funds required in total in our estimate, and what is included in the strategic implementation plan is 2.75 million. So it's a little bit more than the 10%, but just a little bit less than 15. And it's worth noting a couple of primary risks when you enter into a large contract like this. The 2 that I wanted to at least call out was that you heard a lot about our partners and subcontractors. In order for this to work, everything needs to be accepted by the state in order to receive the full funding. The second is the timing, working capital. So if we are paying expenditures in advance of when we are receiving funds from the state, that we will have a little bit of risk on the table from the first point. And second, we do forego some interest over time. Said differently, for every $1 million that we have outstanding on a monthly basis, it's about $2,500 in lost interest. it's not a huge number when it's small, but when it grows, if it was a large number, then that could change dramatically. So we want to make sure we're managing these risks along the way. And we're meeting with the state on Friday to specifically to go through these elements of the process to make sure that everyone's on the same page, because this is, you know, our fiduciary responsibility. Let's go to the next slide. So just another visual way of looking at the amendment that is being proposed here, which includes the state funding total of 20 million over the 2 calendar years that we're talking about. Remember the difference between the state of Ohio fiscal year and our calendar year, and the One Ohio matching requirements, and then the One Ohio operational funding requirements. The totals on this pie chart do not equal the total of 2.75 million because there are some elements that are already part of our operating budget that were already approved. So we need to approve a slightly smaller number than the 2.75 million. And so I just want to make sure that we're calling out when we're looking at this budget amendment from the state perspective, this is what we're looking at in total. So let's go to the next slide. And all I wanted to do here was present this in the exact same format that we did for the actual budget when we presented it last fall. So how does this look when we add it to the budget? And for the, all of this would be sitting in the one line that is for public education. But if it was its own P&L, we just went from left to right from what's covered from state funds, what's the matching funds approved, and what's required from our operating funds. The reason they're in these 3 buckets is because, to my point earlier about specifics, the state dictated exactly which expenses can come from which buckets. There was not flexibility for as much, I guess I'm on the record, for as much as I tried, and ultimately, the other reason you're seeing a larger number for the state funds than 10 million, right? 2 years, 20 million, why is it not 10? Is because we are front loaded. We're crossing 2 fiscal years, one that ends this June, which has a large dollar number associated with it. And then also for the next one that starts in July. So we want to make sure that by the end of our calendar year, we're matching up portions of 2 fiscal years when we talk about the state funding. And that's a little different than our matching funds, which are actually looked at on a calendar year basis. So, bringing us to the total for the actual budget amendment for this year of just over 16 million, 16.1 million. In the interest of time, I'm going to go through all of it and then come back for questions because this is half the story. The other half of the story is the elements of the budget amendment not associated with this statewide initiative, but rather associated with our internal operational needs. The first being the OCIO and investment management, and the second being the operational capacity. So let's go through those few slides quickly. Let's go to the next one. And, I put them together on one page since they're both impacting our operating budget. And I just wanted to note that the total for the budget amendment is a little less than 700,000, so 680 in total, and it breaks out into 5 buckets. The largest being the OCIO, the fees for BlackRock, and a reminder that these are partial years. So this is the portion of the year after we contract with BlackRock. So this would be in future years, this would go up. But this year would be about half, a little less than half would come from that element. The second is expanding legal support to the regions. As we get hundreds and hundreds of grantees and questions that come up and nuances, it's clear that we need additional capacity beyond what we have now with the number of questions and needs that are coming through. And so this is the response to that, which is another 145,000. The third element is the couple of positions that are needed within the One Ohio team that are going to the personnel committee later this month. That would be needed to activate all of the things that you're hearing here today that weren't incorporated into the budget. That's 2 positions for partial years. The last 2 buckets, is for the grant solutions. This is Mighty Crow is probably the largest one, as well as some of our expert work with Amy Bush Stevens as the 2 contractors that are included there that need a little bit more in order to enact the scope and scale of what we're doing. And then there's a number of very small items that make up that last, less than 5% of the budget amendment. These are the 5 buckets. So if I went through it, 75, 80% of it just comes from 3 things: legal support, OCIO, and 2 positions for partial years. All of that while standing on 1 foot. I know it's a lot and fast. Let's go to just the next slide, which puts this into perspective the same way as we did the former slide. But what it does, it's a ton of numbers. But what I did was I took our original approved budget on the left and then added in the statewide initiative. So you'll see that 16.1 million at the bottom, that second number in, that's exactly what we went over a moment ago. Then to the right, the operational element, that 680,000 added in, so that you can see the total budget amendment that's being requested of 16.8 million, which would take our total operating dollars up to $20.6 million. This is big numbers. So I want to just put one piece back into perspective, which is that the vast majority of the additional budget increase is coming from the state dollars, is coming from those 15 million of state dollars that are being requested. The remainder is what we knew going in was being what we needed to provide as matching funds. And then the last element, is half that we had called out at the beginning of the budget, right? 300 and some thousand from the OCIO. And so the true incremental dollars that are needed from our budget unknown, is only a few $100,000 more coming from us above what we knew going into this process. So that puts us, squarely into a very different kind of budget as we take on incredible statewide initiatives like this. And so I wanted to now stop after 10-ish minutes or so, do we have time for questions? For questions if folks had any.
Then I'm gonna look for a motion.
Go ahead.
So I want to clarify when I do this motion. So again, an MOU decided how we operate. So besides having people out of each of the various tiers, it is set in stone in the MOU that we need to have 18 directors for any vote. The last one only had 17. So even though the motion was 16-1 with all classes covered, we didn't have we had 17 and voting, even though we had, of course, a 16-1 I vote. The time before when we voted, we had 21 or 22 directors voting, but nobody from the legislature voted. So when we do a vote on this one, I want you to know what I'm looking for is 18 people to vote. And then, of course, every class. So here will be the motion. The Audit and Finance Committee is recommending the Public Education Initiative budget be approved as approved. Do I say something? Are you counting? Her lips were moving. So
Counting.
As approved by the state of Ohio, including 20 million of the state funding and up to 2.75 million of One Ohio match and operating fund requirements be integrated into the budget amendment as proposed by the One Ohio Recovery Foundation operating budget 26 and 27. Again, included within that is also the Audit and Finance Committee is recommending approval of expenditures of $680,600 be incorporated into the One Ohio budget for 2026 as to support the OCIO as approved by the board, expanding regional grant support and One Ohio operations. So I'll need a motion and a second to that.
So moved.
By Greta, by motion to Daphne, I saw you move. Second the motion. All right, we will have a roll call. And again, I need 18 people voting and affirmative out of each of the classes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Keith.
So this is the first that we've seen this, Dave. In the future, is it possible if this is coming out of committee, can we have this ahead of time to look at?
I'll turn to the team, but we would love to see that happen. I'll only note a lot of things were happening in real time, even with the state over the last number of days. We agree.
Understand that.
Yes.
And I get that, but it's helpful if we have stuff ahead of time so we can look at it.
Absolutely.
Good point, Keith. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Dwayne.
Two things. One, the match, is any of it in kind or is it all cash?
It is all cash required by the state of Ohio.
And the second thing is, and you might have said this, but I missed it. The statewide initiatives, are they just that special grant, or are you looking at Ohio One Foundation dollars? Included to state fund initiatives?
So, in the way that it's proposed, this is all coming from, One Ohio. However, if we are able to fundraise dollars in addition, then we'll be able to offset some of these dollars. Does that help answer the question?
Maybe I didn't ask her right. The MOU talked about us being able to use some of our money towards statewide initiatives. I don't think we've ever decided whether we're going to do that, or maybe I missed it. This money specifically is this marijuana education money. That's what we're talking about. Am I right?
This is a statewide initiative.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, I'll call the question. We'll have roll call.
All right. Director Baker, Director Claymeyer, Director Terry Johnson, Director Rob Blaisdell,
Yes.
Director Tyler Lee,
Yes.
Director Stone,
Yes.
Director Mattia,
One yes vote for meeting, and I'm going to use it now.
Director Silac,
Yes.
Director Greta Johnson, Director Hojado,
Yes.
Director Piccirilli.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Dodge, Director Powell, Director Worsbicky,
Yes.
Director Mason,
Yes.
Director St. John, Director Mayer, Director Amen,
Yes.
Director Bruce,
Yes.
Director Hondrew, Director Whiston, Director Ayers,
Yes.
Director Gregoire,
Yes.
Director Kidd,
Yes.
Director Lee, Director White,
Yes.
Director Radcliffe, Director Roizen.
17. Okay, we are going to take a recess. Thank you. Recess. Thank you very much. I'd like to reconvene the May meeting. Let's update everybody. The audit and finance motions, though they had unanimous vote, there was not a quorum present. We're one shy. So we will have the executive committee address that at a subsequent meeting between now and the June meeting. However, the investment committee, however, the grant oversight, we're going to have the committee report on it, but then we can't make the votes to that committee just yet. So with that, let me go ahead and I'm going to go to Tom and to Sarah for the grants committee report.
Thank you very much. If you haven't done it already, I encourage you to dig down in your lunch and see whose hands fed us today. This is a very cool program in Central Ohio. I don't have a lot to say at all. We were off and running on the grants. Things are going very smoothly. Lessons learned the last time are showing up just where we wanted them to do. And then we all get to welcome Sarah back from maternity leave. Where's the baby?
I'll bring him one of these days.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. But if you'll give us an update on next steps and how we're going, please.
Absolutely. Good to be back and see everyone. So I know you saw this chart at the last meeting. You're going to keep seeing it to give an update on where we are with our 19 regions. They're about halfway through. So 10 of our regions are done with their review. So they reviewed and recommended grants for funding. Those regions are now, their recommended grants are now with the expert panel who is conducting their review. Things are going really well with the expert panel as well. So then we have 9 regions that are still actively reviewing. They all have their region deliberation meetings set, and they have until the end of the month to get us their recommended projects. So we'll be seeing a lot more of these moving forward. Get ready, grants committee, because a lot of grants will be coming your way. But from what I'm hearing from the team, the grants team, and our region team, that things are going really well. Folks are happy with the new system. And so we'll all just get ready because the bulk of the work's now about to come our way.
Very good. Any questions? Okay, grant committee, get a nap in and we'll start with the work and we look forward to seeing it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go back to the issue of the expert panel members. We were going to appoint them today. Actually, maybe I'll be more correct. We are going to reappoint. These are people already been appointed by us. They're going to extend their term by 2 years, which we're allowed to. Those are Stephanie Robinson, Zilly Svoboda, and Kim Sperber. So I'll take a look at the bylaws again. I believe the executive committee has the authority to reappoint them in lieu of this quorum, absence of a quorum. So then the next item I actually have is just turning it over to Lisha for new business regarding our calendar.
Well, I first of all want to just thank you all. I hope that you'll find that your packets will continue to get better at getting information out to you all about the work that you'll need to discuss at the meeting. Of note, we have started to add in key articles and in media coverage so that you can see what folks are talking about when it comes to One Ohio and what folks are talking about across the state and across the country when it comes to behavioral health. And so I wanted to just point that out from an informational perspective. I wanted to talk also about our calendar. Given, our quorum issue today, I want to delay that conversation as well. We're going to have to work through a calendar that will kind of get us through a couple things. One, these key decisions around our investment committee. And Sarah, you can go ahead and pull the calendar up so you can see what's on there. We were going to propose that we cancel the June meeting in preparation for an expanded July meeting and ask for a July meeting from you all to be held virtually with a specific focus on grant deliberations. As you can see, all of our grants are coming in at once. And so unlike that, what we had last time, where we kind of had rolling grants, they're all coming in at the same time. And so we believe that we will get through if we have and host a July meeting for that purpose. We would get through the majority of the region in that conversation if we were to do that. So that was our original proposal. What we just need to sort out is if June is canceled, then based off of the conversations today, hypothetically, we could need to do a virtual June and then also ask for a July. So that is kind of where we are on the fly right now. But look for an email from me with a doodle poll, and that we would do perhaps 2 meetings, one in June and one in July, depending on necessity around the investment work to kind of keep that moving forward. And then July really focus on getting our grants approved, which I'm really excited. A lot of great programs. I've seen some of the applications the regions have put forward, and really proud to work with the regions who, across the state who are spending so much time and being very thoughtful about the applications that they're reviewing. So an exciting summer to spend with us virtually. So this might be the last time we see you in person for the summer, but we think we may need a couple meetings to kind of get through those things. So thank you.
And with that, there's no other new business, and the next meeting will be chaired by Julie. So I just want to say, I want to thank each and every one of you who gave me the opportunity to chair us for the last 2 years and 4 months. It's been a meaningful part of my life. It's been meaningful to have each of you in my life. So thank you. Meeting is adjourned.